Oh, you gonna get it in time? There we go.
I did it. I got the beer crack in time.
Welcome back to another episode of Stacking Dennys. I'm Jordan McAbee of RotoBaller. My co-host Nick Giffen of the Action Network. Chris Buescher in Victory Lane at Richmond Raceway. A lot of NASCAR bettors sitting or holding those 80-1 tickets, hoping that Buescher could hold off Hamlin on that late restart. He did. He gets RFK into Victory Lane. Brad Keselowski and Buescher lead a combined 190 of the 400 laps. Kind of reminded me of Bristol last year, where RFK just hit it and they had the best cars and no one else could really do anything about it. Hamlin was up there all day, but he wasn't, I wouldn't say he was a true contender. He's a solid second, third place car, but he wasn't great. Now, I will say, Bubba Wallace looked really good. Tyler Reddick had really good speed. Reddick shot himself in the foot, as did Eric Almirola, who had a ton of speed. Amazing long-run speed out of that 10 car, but they both had pit road penalties, had issues. But Chris Buescher locks himself into the playoffs. We are getting down to crunch time, and you know what? And we're going to get to this in a little bit, talking about Chase Elliott possibly pointing his way in, because that is now back on the table, according to some people. Nick, I know your stance on that and what your stance has been up here. But we're going to talk about Richmond first. What did you think of that race? Was it good? Jeff Gluck's poll, it was about what I expected. Here's the thing with Richmond. There's not many wrecks. There's not a ton of excitement. You have to really enjoy strategy to enjoy this race. I thought it was a above average race. 53.9% said it was a good race. Do you agree? I feel like we're not going to get any, home run out of the ballpark races out of Richmond without mass calamity happening, and it's just not going to happen at that track.
I thought it was a good race. It was racing. It was some drivers came and some drivers went. You could pass, as we like to see. I mean, Bubba Wallace was able to pass his way forward, and Eric Almirola, that first stage, passed the whole field basically.
Oh my God.
That's what we want, right? Don't we want passing? I mean, people complain we don't have enough passing, and then when we have enough passing, we get a 50%. And I'm like, what do you want? People want wrecks is what they want. They want drama, they want wrecks. But that was good racing. That was really good racing. So I thought that was a very good race. Lots of different leaders, lots of different cars that looked like they could win. Keselowski at one point, obviously Reddick or Hamlin, Bubba Wallace at various points all looked like they could win. And I thought it was a really, really, really good race. I mean, Almirola looked like he could win if he hadn't had a penalty. He moved from 24th to 6th in stage 1, I think it was, which is just absurd in 70 laps. So thought it was a fantastic race, and was very obviously happy with all the betting results. I didn't have the 80-1 ticket. I should have. I actually had Buescher better than that to win. But I did bet his top four at 16-1, put 3/4 of a unit on that, so that's a nice 12 unit just on that bet there. Hit my biggest, I think one of my biggest bets of the year on Keselowski over Blaney. Won every single head-to-head matchup I have. Richmond's so predictable because there aren't a ton of crashes, and the fast cars are fast, and we can tell who they are from practice typically, plus some track history type stuff. So really, really good week. I think between tracked and then ones obviously I can't track in the Action app, like some of those head-to-heads weren't, like they were offered at Caesars, and for whatever reason we're having issues pulling in Caesars matchups, etc. I think I was up well over 20 units. I think I was in the 22, 23 unit range this week for Richmond. So great race, great betting results. I can't complain one bit. I don't know what people want, man. Like, what do you want? That race was so good. There was a ton of passing.
I think you hit the nail on the head. They want wrecks. That's what people want. They want to see wrecks. They want to. That poll would have got 80% yes if Hamlin would have dumped Buescher for the win, and that's just the fact of the matter. Like that's what people want. That's why people like Daytona and Talladega so much, because there's the wrecks. That's why they like Darlington earlier this year with Chastain, Kansas, Pocono. Like that's why all those races got higher percentages of the poll yes vote in the poll. It's because they want to see wrecks. But as you said, Richmond, very predictable. One guy that surprised, he had a ton of speed early, had a ton of speed in practice, and kind of fell off as the day went on. Still ended up in 10th place, was Kevin Harvick. Obviously that team, they're hitting a stretch of tracks that is really good for them. New Hampshire's really good for them. Pocono's really good for them. Richmond's very good for them. And then Michigan this last week, Kevin Harvick's won 5 of the last 7 Michigan races, which is just kind of absurd when you think about it. Just insane what he's doing at that track, and he's always been very good there. But I was a little surprised that Harvick fell off, especially considering, Almirola had race-winning speed. Ryan Preece got his first top 10 finish and first top 5 finish of the year.
Yeah.
He had really good speed. And me, I don't like Ryan Preece. I think he's an asshole, but solid run out of him. Very good run. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was really surprised by Kevin Harvick. It was almost like Childers was making that car a little worse as the day went on, because they started out super fast when the race started and where they were in practice. But Stewart-Haas Racing, swept the top 11 with all 4, even Chase Briscoe. And that was one thing, I do little news posts for RotoBaller, and one of them was Chase Briscoe is going to be significantly better this week than he has been this year, because it's a short track package, and people just have to remember that Briscoe is always better in that package. And we see it this week, for Michigan. When I saw the early odds, Briscoe's 4-1 to finish top 10. He's been garbage in this intermediate package, so I'm just hoping that we get some head-to-heads with Briscoe in it, priced similarly to these other guys that are longer in top 10 odds. For head-to-heads. But yeah, I think people just wanted to see wrecks. They don't want to actually see good racing, which is what we saw at Richmond. It was a quick race. There was one incident, if I remember right, just the Suarez thing. Other than the stage cautions, I don't think there was any other cautions. I could be wrong, but there was that little bit of drama at the end of stage 2 with Alex Bowman and Kyle Larson. But overall, it's good racing. Richmond, I think, is a great track, but people will always complain if there's not a bunch of incidents.
Yeah. So it was interesting. You mentioned Briscoe. I mean, I wrote him up as a tournament play. I didn't do a Paul Menard pick of the week, but I texted my buddy Matt Howard, who we've talked about several times on here. I said Preece, Paul Menard pick of the week. Preece, I think, ended up in the optimal lineup. So from starting from 11th, finished, like you said, first of the season, top 5. First was Stewart-Haas Racing. So really solid day for Stewart-Haas Racing overall. You mentioned Almirola, and you're right. Kevin Harvick just kind of didn't keep up with the track. That's one thing about Richmond. The track changes a ton throughout the day because it gets cooler into the, not the evening, but late afternoon. It starts to get cooler, and the track definitely changes. And that's where we saw it go from Hamlin, Bubba, Reddick to Keselowski, Buescher having the better cars at the end of the race there. So I thought that was really interesting, and that's stuff we like to see as well. I mean, we want to see the track changes and how different teams and drivers keep up with it. All 3 of my top 10 bets hit as well. Joey Logano has now made it 16 for his last 19 at Richmond with Team Penske under low downforce conditions, I think it is, something like that, for hitting in the top 10. He finished 4th, really solid day for him. He just kept moving forward all day, very steady. Eric Almirola, of course, top 10. And then what was my other top 10 bet? I don't remember.
Austin Dillon, plus 715.
No, that was Keselowski I tracked, was plus 125.
Yeah. So. You were high on Keselowski last week.
Yeah. I had so much Keselowski. I was like, watch him wreck lap 1, and my day is just going to be miserable the whole day.
Yeah.
But no, Keselowski nearly pulled off the win. It was crazy. I was like, man, I've got Bubba. I've got Keselowski. At one point, they were running 1-2, and I had Buescher, top forward. So I was sitting there I could hit either Kez, I think 35-1 I got him, and then Bubba I got 40-1 day of, I think it was at Stations Casino here, plus Superbook had him at 40-1, and then I was like, man, these two look like the best of the best, and maybe I'll get one of those. And then Buescher came in, I'm like, well, at least I have his top forward 16-1, but I definitely would have liked to have grabbed the that what was it, 80-1 that some people were hitting. So congrats to you if you got that. I did live bet Almirola 30-1 right before the end of stage 1. Still love that bet. Just obviously didn't work out with the penalty that he had for the commitment line violation. But Richmond, man, it's a predictable track. I love betting Richmond. Last year it was the Kevin Harvick win, right? 25-1 midweek. And then obviously the messed up line that FanDuel posted 130-1. But at the same time, I did take Harvick midweek at 25-1. He ended up hitting. Richmond, just a very, very predictable track.
And that's funny because, now both the summer races at Richmond have produced that is long shot winners. Harvick 25-1, and obviously that mistake of him at 130, and then Buescher 80-1, long shot winners. We sit here and say that Richmond's predictable, but then at the same time, is it books not valuing the guys that, because like Buescher finished third here last year. Buescher's always been pretty strong. He's been good at short tracks. Harvick's always good at Richmond. Is it just books kind of sleeping? I guess would be the best term there for
I think
for a Richmond
part of
race
it
like
is
that.
they look at Richmond 1, and Buescher did not have a DNF. He finished 30th, but he had a pit penalty on like lap 130 of a 400 lap race that set him 2 laps down right off the start. So not the start, but a third of the way into the race or something. So it just wasn't able to recover. Kind of like a little bit like Christopher Bell, right? Like Bell was 2 laps down at certain points, and he tried to get back on the lead lap and kind of did, but never ended up having the pit cycles work out for him. Finished 20th. So it was like that kind of a day for Buescher at Richmond 1. Plus, Buescher has no top 10s at shorter flat tracks this year, including Martinsville, including Gateway, and then, of course, New Hampshire and Phoenix as well. So he just – and if you want to throw in Nashville in there even, he doesn't have a top 10 at a shorter flat track. So it made sense why books kept him longer. I was showing value on him for sure, and I had definitely had him on my radar. I just decided to go a little more conservative and go the top Ford route.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned, Christopher Bell, they kind of struggled a little bit all weekend, didn't quite find the speed, even before their pit penalty. Bell got up to about, I think, 17th at the end of the stage 1, started back in 29th. Still not really the performance that we were expecting out of Bell. I think he would have gotten to the top 10 by the end of the race if he didn't have that pit penalty, but that pit penalty definitely screwed him. Eric Almirola, another guy that had that had a pit penalty, he was just so fast that he was able to overcome it, which is that just says how fast that damn car was. Like, I have no doubt in my mind, if he wouldn't have had that penalty, I think Almirola wins this race. That's how good that car was. It was ridiculous how fast that car was on the long run. But like you said, Richmond, very predictable. Again, everybody, Ryan Blaney isn't good at Richmond. All I saw last weekend of people talking about Ryan Blaney was, this is the week he does it at Richmond. He's
22 to 1, 22 to 1. I'm like, what?
He's not good.
He never cracked the top. Yeah. He never cracked the top 10 on speed. He finished 14th simply because other people had issues, basically.
Yeah. And it's another race. Alex Bowman finishes outside the top 10. He hasn't had a top 10 since he got hurt. So something to keep an eye on there. Hendrick was
terrible. Very bad.
I don't know why.
People are asking me, is Kyle Larson, is William Byron, are they experimenting? I'm like, no, because both Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman need to at least finish in the top 5 or 6 or potentially win, and they're shit in the bed as well. It's not Larson. It's not Byron experimenting. Hendrick was just bad. Yeah.
And I feel like we see that, once or twice a year from a team like Hendrick Motorsports. Like, they're not good, and it's clearly affecting all teams. And if you listen to the team radios, they said the same thing. Like, we're all shit. Everybody's shit. So
yeah, exactly.
But you mentioned Chase Elliott, so we'll get to looking at the point standings here. As I said, you have been firmly on the Chase Elliott will not make it into the points. People are now talking about him potentially making it into the points as we're getting closer. I think so. Bubba Wallace, so Buescher's locked in. Guys in points right now: Harvick, Keselowski, Bubba Wallace, Michael McDowell. Those are the last 4 in for the playoffs on points right now. If we don't get a winner below 16, Harvick solidly at plus 182 above the cut. Keselowski plus 151. It's going to take 4 completely new winners under 16th in points for those 2 to miss it. Bubba Wallace plus 54. That's good. He's not good road courser, but could he potentially lose a bunch of ground here? Yes. Now what it comes down to is Chase Elliott is 40 below the cut line, okay? And everybody's looking at this saying, yeah, Chase Elliott's a very good road course racer. He can make up 40 points. We've seen him making up all these points. I feel like everybody's forgetting that Michael McDowell has the most points on road courses in this car. Like, the most points of everybody in the series. And that's who Chase Elliott is going against, is Michael McDowell.
And he's going against Ty Gibbs, and he's going against AJ Allmendinger, and he's going against Daniel Suarez, and he's going against Alex Bowman. They're all good road course racers. They're all very good road course racers. And you know what? They're all going to take the stage point strategy. So with 2 road course races, It's going to be so hard for Chase Elliott to make up ground on all of these guys. Not only does he have to make 40 points on Allmendinger, he has to make up 36 points on Daniel Suarez or whatever it is. Or I said Allmendinger, I meant McDowell. And then he has to make up, not 40. He has to make up 22 points, I think it is, on
Gibbs, yeah.
Ty Gibbs. And he has to make up 18 points on Allmendinger, and he has to make up 6 points on Suarez. And there's no guarantee he's going to do all of that, right? One of those guys could finish second or third, and Chase Elliott finishes seventh, and all of a sudden he loses ground to them again. Plus, there's the wild card of Daytona, right? Like, he could easily just wreck out at Daytona. So could all the other guys, but he easily could be involved in a big one at Daytona, right? It's so hard. These are like the worst possible races for Chase Elliott to make up points because they're the races where these guys have the ability to do the best compared to something like a Michigan, right? Like McDowell might struggle this weekend. He's never been great at Michigan. Ty Gibbs should be fine. Bubba Wallace should be really good. Allmendinger should be fine. He actually has a pretty decent record, I think, at Michigan, and he's been good at the similar tracks this year. Suarez, who knows? I mean, Trackhouse is definitely taken a nosedive, but you get the point, right? Like what was it? I think it was, so we're at 4 races left. I think it was 10 races to go. And I replied to that tweet saying, like, there's no way Chase Elliott points his way in, and he had to make up 8.4 or 8.6 points per race. Yeah. And he fell down to like a little over 11. I think it was like 11.05 or something like that. He's back to needing 10 points per race, but he still has lost ground, and he's lost ground at tracks that he should have been making up ground at. So in terms of a per race deal. So I think it's still very unlikely he points his way in. I think it's much more likely if he makes the playoffs, it's because he won one of these races.
Yeah. I think that's what it's going to come down is whether he can win a race because, like I said, this is going to be this week at Michigan is going to be a make or break for Michael McDowell. This is going to be massive for that team to potentially make the playoffs and point. Like who would have thought that we're potentially talking Michael McDowell versus Chase Elliott getting in on points to the playoffs this year.
You know what else is going to happen? Ford is going to give Michael McDowell every damn thing he needs, right? He's the only Ford in this group that can make it. We're going to assume Keselowski is safe, right? And Buescher just locked himself in. Ty Gibbs not a Ford. A.J. Allmendinger not a Ford. Daniel Suarez not a Ford. Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman not Fords. Austin Cindric too far out unless he wins a road course race, which is possible. And that's the other thing. If somebody like Austin Cindric wins a road course, then Chase Elliott all of a sudden has to get Bubba Wallace in points, and he's not doing that.
Yeah.
So he's not pointing his way in, folks. He's not. I would say minus 1,000. He is not 10-1 against.
Wow, that's quite the statement. But it makes sense when you fully break this down and look at it. It's going to be very difficult for Chase Elliott. I can't wait to talk next week about what kind of strategy Chase Elliott's going to use. Whether Gustafson chooses to take the point strategy or go for the win, because we know Gustafson sucks at strategy.
It may depend on what happens at Michigan, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good. And what does McDowell and all them do too? Do they go for the win? Do they go for points? Like that's one thing I did know.
If you're McDowell, I think you just got to go for points and hope nobody outside the top 16 wins. Obviously, again, depending on what happens at Michigan, but it's going to be very interesting going into Indy Road Course and going into Glen, because that's going to provide us really good betting opportunities, either by fading certain drivers because they'll be on a non-optimal strategy, or by taking them for stage wins, that kind of thing, right?
Yep.
So it's going to be a fantastic 2 races to bet because books don't know how to adjust for that stuff. Maybe they do, but they clearly did not last year. There were guys who were obviously going to stay out for stages that were starting close enough to the front, not in the front, but close enough that if all the other people who should have pitted, it would have made it really interesting. And I still think, we're not going to have the stage cautions this year, but I still think at least one of the stages, whether it's stage 1 or stage 2, there's going to come a point where it's more beneficial to pit before the stage end for a lot of these guys, just because it works out better on your tires and your fuel consumption and things like that.
Yeah, that's. I think it was Joey Logano last year at one of the road courses. He was like 40-1 to win the stage, and he was the one that made the most sense to stay out, and that's what he did, and then he won the stage. I'm pretty sure it was Joey Logano. I could be wrong, but
it was. I hit that one, so I was very happy about that.
Yeah. But overall, Truex still leading the points. I think he's got the regular season wrapped up outside of a catastrophe. But Denny Hamlin, new second place driver in points, overtakes William Byron. Christopher Bell sitting there in fourth. JGR still 3 of the top 4 spots in points. Kyle Busch fifth. Kevin Harvick sixth. Ross Chastain, who has fallen completely off the map. Like, I know you and I both thought that he was gonna finally have some speed at Richmond. And he looked decent,
and it looked
practice.
like it from practice, yeah.
And they once again just shit the bed. Like, I don't know what's going on with them. I want to like him for Michigan this week because comparable tracks he's been great at this year. But I can't. There's no way you can trust Ross Chastain right now.
And Daniel Suarez is not good at Richmond, but he was god awful. So it is a trackhouse thing right now for sure. They're off, and they cannot be off with Daniel Suarez because he's not in the playoffs. Right? He needs to get into the playoffs. So I don't think it's experimenting on Ross's part. I think it's just the team has lost something since they won at Nashville. I don't know what it was about Nashville. He kicked ass there, but Ross Chastain did. But every other race, he's been mediocre at best. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what causes that. Like, have they just – maybe Ross is experimenting, but if so, what is going on with Suarez? It makes no sense. They've just taken a nosedive. And, I actually saw an interesting poll. I said, if you're Trackhouse and you really do want SVG, do you buy a charter or do you just put him in the 99 because Suarez has not been cutting it? And I voted put him in the 99.
So did I. Daniel Suarez isn't good. And I don't
no.
And that's another thing with SVG. I don't understand putting him in a cup ride full time.
I don't
but that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, I think if you're a Trackhouse, get Suarez out of there. He hasn't been able to do it anywhere he's raced in the Cup Series. I don't understand why he keeps getting opportunities. He's not good. He had one win last year, and that's because they hit on something in the road course package. That is the only reason that Daniel Suarez got a win. Speaking of,
and because Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson threw that race away.
yeah, exactly. Speaking of Chase Elliott, though, at road course races, I saw an article. It was from like one of these like sites that could be real, could be bullshit. I'm assuming it's real though. And what I saw was he basically said, I'm really not that good of a road course racer. Hendrick Motorsports just hit on something with the package when he went through his dominating phase, and that's why we won all those races. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's very interesting. That just adds another layer to this whole playoff thing on whether Chase Elliott's going to be able to win, because obviously he has been really good at Watkins Glen. Can he do it again? And, if that's true and he loses a little bit of an edge, that just makes it that much more difficult for him to get into the playoffs. But other than that, we're not really seeing a ton of change here in the playoff standings and the overall points standings. I still think it's going to be an exciting last 4 races here before the playoff cut line.
One other thing, real quick, going back to Richmond, because I was thinking about this when we were talking Daniel Suarez, and he finished 33rd. Every car finished the race and finished within 5 laps of the lead. That's the first time in NASCAR history that's happened.
Really? That's
in
surprising.
Cup Series history. Yeah. That is it's not the first time every car is not DNF'd, but it's the first time every car is finished within 5 laps of the lead. If you think about a lap at Richmond, it's 25 seconds. 5 times 25 is 125. It's basically within 2 minutes of the lead over a 3-hour race. That's pretty sick. It was a perfectly clean race aside from that late Suarez caution. So, maybe 33rd is a little unflattering him, but he was a 31st place car. If we look at, for example, green flag speed, Daniel Suarez was 32nd in green flag speed, right behind Ryan Newman. Maybe would have been 1 or 2 places faster had he not had that last few laps issue and it hurt him. But he was no better than a top 29, top 30 car all day. But just wanted to point out, like, if we want good racing, that was good racing. I mean, that was great racing, and there were no failures. No, I know I like failures when they happen because that's kind of classic NASCAR that I grew up with. But at the same time, seeing all 36 cars have really, solid, decent races was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have any complaints from that race. I don't have any great takeaways, but I thought it was a solid Sunday afternoon race. That's all I can say about it. Obviously we talked about the point standings, the point cutoff line for getting into the playoffs. Big topic last week at Richmond was A.J. Allmendinger, and that's going to get us right into whine about it because he is my whine about it. Actually, not him, but just people in general. And to be honest with you, before 30 minutes before we sat down to record this, I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, I don't have anything to talk about on Whine About It this week because I literally have nothing to complain about. I could say something about Rick Allen, or I could, make up something. And then I started seeing tweets once again. And, obviously the big story at Richmond was that A.J. Allmendinger went and raced through, or he was more concerned about racing at Road America and trying to get the win there for the Xfinity Series than he was at practicing and qualifying the Cup car at Richmond. He's in the thick of this playoff hunt. Here's the thing. It did not fucking matter. A.J. Allmendinger was a 27th place car in the first Richmond race. You know what he was in this race? A 27th place car. Not going and being out in practice for 20 minutes and then not being able to qualify. Congratulations, you start 36th. You're behind J.J. Yaley, Ryan Newman, and the other shit boxes. You know what you're going to do in the first 3 laps? Pass the shit boxes. You're going to be right where you would have fucking qualified anyway. And I know Denny Hamlin went and, he talked about Allmendinger could have brought out strategy, if he would have qualified 25th and maybe get some stage points. It wasn't going to happen. And yes, there's always a possibility. Yes, there's always a possibility that Allmendinger could have got caught up in a wreck at the beginning. But the fact of the matter is, they think that they can win Indy Road Course. They think they can win Watkins Glen, and they knew they were going to be a shit car at Richmond, which they were. A.J. Allmendinger is not good at Richmond. Wasn't in the first race, did not make any improvements this race. It would not have made any difference if he was out there practicing. Does it look bad that he didn't come and practice and qualify his Cup car? No, because he is an elite road course racer. The whole Colleague racing thing is trophy hunting. That is their motto. So what are they doing? They're trophy hunting, and that's what Allmendinger did. And that's exactly why he was, how good he is at road courses. That's why he was I think he was minus 130 favorite for the Xfinity race on Saturday at Road America. Now, he had some mechanical issues that he ended up wrecking. But this whole thing about Allmendinger skipping practice and qualifying is so blown out of proportion. And now that Hamlin's talking about it, I feel like it's just going to get legs and people are going to keep talking about it. God forbid we get to Daytona and we actually get to the cutoff and Allmendinger misses out by 4 points, and then all of a sudden it's going to be, well, if he would have went and practiced and qualified, no, it wouldn't have made a difference. It wouldn't have. A.J. Allmendinger is who we know he is. The only way he's getting in the playoffs is if he wins one of these next 2 races.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only difference it made for me was I did bet Eric Jones plus 105 versus Allmendinger off of the news, only because all it did was increase his chances a little bit that he'd get involved in something and maybe be lapped before Jones did. You know what I mean? Those kinds of things that could make a difference in the long run. I didn't really care about in terms of his playoff stuff. You're right. All of that stuff. 100% you're right. It didn't matter. It didn't matter if he starts dead last. It didn't matter if he doesn't practice. The only difference made for me was in that betting versus Eric Jones. I had them really close. They both kind of stink at Richmond. And so I had them both really close, and just that little extra for Allmendinger, that kind of stuff made me bet Jones plus 105. Now, if we look at green flag speed, A.J. Allmendinger was 0.016 miles an hour faster over the whole race than Eric Jones, but still finished behind him because, that late restart and stuff happened. So they were essentially a coin flip, and I got plus 105. Plus, there was that little extra chance for something to happen to Allmendinger, so I felt pretty good about that bet. But yeah, you're right. It wasn't going to make a damn difference. A.J. Allmendinger hasn't finished better than 20th at Richmond in low downforce years, which goes all the way back to 2016, not counting 2019. And that's whether that's, with JTG or his current team or anything like that. He's bad at Richmond. So He finished 27th or something like that. Maybe it's a little unflattering. Maybe he finishes 23rd instead, where Jones finished. But that's 23rd anyway. He wasn't gonna do anything. So I agree with you. I think there was way too much made out of that. That said, he had a terrible car at Road America. He did not have a good car. They Colleague Racing as a whole, that team missed it on the brakes, and that's where you saw Chandler Smith blew his brake rotor and intentionally steered his car into the wall to avoid hitting head on. And Allmendinger had no brakes as well. He was able to manage them, and it's a testament to his skill at road courses that he was able to. I don't remember where he finished, but he hung inside the top 5 even with massive brake issues the whole day. It just goes to show how skilled he is at road courses, but not skilled at Richmond.
No. And that's not going to be the make or break for his playoffs. What's your whine about it, Nick?
Yeah, so I don't really have, like you, I don't have a lot to whine about in the Cup Series. I thought it was a great race. Thought it was, overall there wasn't any like real drama. I could whine about Rick Allen, but I'm not going to. We know he sucks. The NBC broadcast is so much better than Fox, but aside from Rick Allen, we were like 5 or 10 minutes in the race, and I was already just beyond annoyed with him for like 8 things. But that's not my whine about it. So I'm going to go to the truck race. And I knew as soon as Ty Majeski did not win that truck race, I knew people were going to absolutely just hound his crew chief for the decision they made to not split the last segment into 2, and instead just go without pitting at all to try to win the race, especially because he had the best car, the best truck. I knew people were going to get so upset about it. So I tweeted, like right when it ended, before I could even see people get mad about it, I was like, I know people are going to be mad, but the call isn't as bad as you think. Was it a bad call relative to the other call he could have made? Yes. My back of the napkin math says he lost about 6% win probability. Because you can look at the number of cautions that happen at Richmond at the end of these races, and especially it being the truck series, that probability is heightened. I mean, we saw one at the end of the Cup race. We didn't see one at the end of the truck race. You would have thought we'd more likely see one at the end of the truck race than the Cup race. But if a caution comes out at all, anytime during that, he wins. Like, it's a guaranteed slam dunk win. But if he pits and the caution comes out, it absolutely kills him, potentially. Because others are going to do the opposite. They're going to stay out longer because they know Majeski will be lapped. And then if a caution comes out, they all get to pit. Yeah, Majeski gets to unlap himself, but he starts at the back. He has to pass a bunch of cars with maybe 20 laps to go. And I know he had clearly the best car, but he wasn't going to pass a bunch of cars with 20 to go, something like that, 15 to go, 25 to go. He wasn't going to win in that case. So, yeah, the probability of caution is pretty low at Richmond, but not as low in the Truck Series. And he still could have won with the strategy he took if traffic had been a little different, if Hocevar had a slightly bad pit stop, if Hocevar got held up by Zane Smith, who had the same strategy, just did it a few laps sooner, and then ended up falling back anyway. And Zane didn't end up passing Ty Majeski. So it was close. And think about it. Ty Majeski lost by 2.3 seconds on ass-old tires versus Hocevar, who had way many more laps, newer tires. Only lost by 2.3. That was basically a coin flip, whether he would have won or not won with the strategy he took. Not counting if a yellow came out. And then if a yellow came out, he was almost guaranteed to win because he had the best car. He would have been able to pit under caution with the whole field lapped. Everybody else would have had to pit anyway because just how Richmond eats tires. He was going to win. So I know, and I'm not calling anybody out. I'm not mad at them. But a lot of people who were mad about that bet on Ty Majeski. I think it potentially could cloud the judgment a little bit because was it the wrong call? Yes. But people were acting like it was the worst call in the history of NASCAR on Twitter, and it really wasn't. The win probabilities ran pretty close. If I were to make the call, I would have made the opposite call than the one they did, but it was close. So, I think people also misinterpreted my tweet like me saying I think it was a good call. I don't. I think it was the more conservative, the safer play for sure, but it wasn't a bad call. And he doesn't need to win. The 5 playoff points would be nice, but also getting points for regular season whatever helps. And just, getting a solid finish is a good thing still. So I thought it was fine. Either strategy, it's one of those things where if it's like we always talk about it in the NFL. What do you do when it's 4th and 8 from your own 31-yard line? You could punt, you could field goal, or I should say like 38-yard line. You could punt, you kick a field goal, you could go for it, and they're all like really close in probability. Well, in the NFL, it's a lot more well-defined that you'll gain 1 or 2% by doing this, or lose 1 or 2% by doing that, because we have gazillions of data points on this, and it's a very structured thing. But this NASCAR stuff is so much more fluid, and there aren't data points for like with this many laps you pit on this track, because we don't know. It's so much more. There's a lot more margin for error in NASCAR than there is in NFL, where like all these things are just scientifically pinpointed with like thousands and thousands and thousands of data points. So I had no problem with either call. I think they took a conservative call. Again, wasn't one I was going to take, but it wasn't that bad of a call. Let's be real.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of people they're influenced by their bets, and being able to look at an overall situation is always a good thing. But that's going to wrap up Wine About It, as usual, presented by Luvabella Winery. Thank those guys for being sponsors of this podcast. Make sure you check out their wines: Purple Rain, the Reds Blend, Passion Blends or Passion Wines. Great wines. Find them in the big stores. You can get them shipped to you. As always, I'll put the link in the description of the video where to get that shipped. And that's speaking of wine and speaking of alcohol. It is my town's picnic this weekend. And if you are a longtime listener of this show, you know how important this is. So we have our town has a picnic every single year. It's one of my favorite weekends of the year. I always have a great time, and basically what it is from Thursday through Sunday is just we get drunk. I am drunk from Thursday through Sunday the entire time. I never sober up. I am always drunk. Last year we decided on this podcast to set an over-under on the number of beers that I would drink. It was set at 84.5 last year. I got about 8 p.m. on Sunday night, I got to 85. I finished that beer. I turned around and I went home because I was dead after that weekend. And I said I would never try to drink that many beers again, because I was committed to hitting the over, but man, that was awful. So this year I put the Twitter poll up. I put the poll up to see what followers would say. I knew the 80 plus was going to win. I knew that option was going to win, and it did. 38.4% got it. Second highest was between 60 and 69 beers. Nice. That got 28%, and then 50 to 59 and 70 to 79 got similar amounts. I'm actually, as much as I want to set this line at something absurd again, one, I've been relatively sober the past 2 to 3 weeks, so I think my tolerance is down quite a bit. Yep. Also, I'm pretty sure my girlfriend would kill me if I drank 85 beers again this year. So I'm going to stay away from that number. I'm going to stay away from the 70s. I'm going to set this weekend's beer drinking number at 61.5. I'm going a little conservative. I'm going to try to keep it, a little bit tame this year, because last year got a little bit out of hand, but still 61 beers over a 4-day period.
That's only 15 and change per day, right? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Hey, come on.
I'm just saying. That's
I should have like live streamed how I felt that Sunday. I did not think I was going to be able to get to the over, because I think I needed like 13 the last day or something.
Well, it depends on what beers you're drinking, right? Like, I mean, if you're drinking,
that's Busch Light out there.
That's easy. Like, I wouldn't be that drunk 15 a day, honestly. I could drink 15 a day. I could drink 1 an hour and be normal during my awake hours.
I struggled last year, so I'm going low, and maybe I will. So I will say, weather forecast last year, it was super hot, incredibly hot last year. This year, low 60s at night, and then like pretty warm during the day. But I think that's going to also play into drinking a lot more. So there's a chance that I get back into the 80s, but I'm going super conservative. Get your bets in on this, Nick. I know I know you're going to just slam me over here.
I'm taking it. So I mean, you and I talk all the time, even not just when we're doing the podcast, but I knew you've been on a lower drinking, amount, volume over not just past few weeks, but even the past few months. It's been lower. And I know that. And so I took that into account. I did not vote for 80 to 89 or whatever it was, 80 plus. I voted 70 to 79 simply because I kind of assumed you were drinking light beer. And for me, I know I could at least just polish off 1 an hour while I'm awake and not even be that drunk by the end of it. So if I'm awake, let's say 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. or to 2 a.m. the next day, like that's 16 hours of awakeness. I could have 15 beers, no problem, if I had 1 an hour, and then pack a couple more in there, and I think you're fine. So you set the over at what, 61 and a half or 60 and a half?
61 and a half. I also have to note here. So Saturday and Sunday is all day drinking. Thursday and Friday is just kind of the evening hours.
Okay.
It's not. Okay. It's not super late.
That definitely
that also factors into
influences. Yeah, that definitely influences. Still, I would drink more than 1 an hour, so I wouldn't feel that bad. But I would say more like 64 and a half. Even though I voted 70 to 79, now that you say that, I would say maybe more like 64 and a half. I was going to say 68 and a half, so you could hit the over with 69. Nice. But I think because of that, I should say more like 63 and a half, 64 and a half in that range.
Yeah. Yeah, if it was at 68 and a half, I'd get to 69 and then just stop.
Exactly. Isn't that exactly?
Yeah.
Which maybe should be the line then.
And we'll have to set a line as well. Last year we did number of laps that Ford led versus number of beers that I drank. Which one would be higher? The head to head. So maybe this year we'll do like Toyota or something. But Ford has the speed lately. But
how about?
So that is.
Oh man. Okay. This is interesting. Let me pull up my model here real quick because I have an average finishing position. Let me look at Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell, and Ty Gibbs. So the JGR cars. I'm just going to add them up real quick. Now let me throw in Tyler Reddick. And, oh God, what did I just... Well, okay. I accidentally closed out the first thing I'd added up. 9.1, 15.8, and 10.7. And Bubba Wallace is 14.1. So if you add up my model's average finish for the Toyotas, it is 68. So 67 and a half would be like an interesting line. Not average finish, but like some of their finishes. For the Toyotas, 68.09 or something like that. So 68.1.
I kind of want to change it now to 67 and a half.
Just for that.
I'm doing it. 67 and a half is what it's at final. 67 and a half.
Yeah, and then we also have the Toyota sum of finishes versus Jordan's beer drinking.
Yep. So now we can do that head to head. Instead of laps led, we'll do Toyota sum of finishes.
Yeah,
I like it.
Which is greater.
I like it.
Which is greater. So it'll be interesting. I guess we'll have to get our bets in before practice and qualifying because you start on Thursday.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yep, 67 and a half it is. But that's going to wrap that up.
Speaking of beer.
Yeah, very good.
Get another beer crack in there.
And now we're going to move to before we get to Michigan. I want to talk about, I got a DM earlier this week, and I had some fun conversations over this past weekend with people talking about sports betting, and it's something that I think we've talked about on the show before, but it's nice to hit on it again because, as sports betting gets more legalized throughout the country, basically the DM I got this weekend was, hey, sports betting is about to be legal in my country or in my state in January. I've never bet NASCAR before. How do I get into NASCAR betting? And that kind of just sparked, a thought in my head of our, top tips of what someone should do when they want to get into NASCAR betting. Because one of the biggest questions I get from a lot of my friends is like, one, how did you get into NASCAR betting? And two, how the hell do you make money at it? And it is different than betting on other sports. This isn't like football and basketball where there's two teams and you're betting. No, you got a 36 car field and you're trying to bet a winner, or you're betting one versus the other, which would be a more similar to like football spreads. But the big thing with NASCAR is people see these 80-1 tickets. They see these 12-1 tickets. That's what people see. So I think people get attracted to betting NASCAR because of those. It's kind of like golf, but at the same time, I want to say, be careful because the 81 tickets aren't very common to hit. So right. I know this is one of the first segments that you and I have actually planned pre-show. I DM'd you the other day and was like, hey, I want to talk about this. I want to get your thoughts. What are some of your tips for someone that's just trying to get into NASCAR betting, or maybe, is thinking about getting into NASCAR betting, what you'd recommend that they do to start to become a good NASCAR bettor or get on that track of learning about, betting on this sport?
Yeah. So I'm actually going to go from the assumption that they don't even know anything about NASCAR, not just betting.
That's great.
NASCAR, but I'm going to go from the assumption they don't know anything about NASCAR. Tip number 1, start watching it. You're going to be a better NASCAR bettor if you watch it. I know people who bet on NASCAR and they don't watch it, and they don't develop an intuition, or they just blindly tail people, and that's fine. But you are going to have a better intuition of who to tail and what to tail and why to tail certain people. Now, obviously, number 2 then falls straight off of number 1. Follow experts. But it's not as easy as following NASCAR betting experts because they're going to be throwing around terminology you may not understand, or you might have heard of the terminology, but you might not understand why. So you're going to, step number 3, look up NASCAR terminology. Don't just look, and I know you and I know this, and all the people listening know this, but that I should say, not everybody listening, but all the ones who've been listening for a long time with us, or even a little while, know that finishing position isn't everything, right? So don't look at how a driver is doing in his finishing position recently or in the standings. You need to look at different statistics, and that includes things like driver rating, average running position, green flag speed. So those are all things you can find on various sites. iFantasy Race, of course, being a great resource. Go there and check out everything Ryan puts up, because Ryan Rants from iFantasy Race, because he has green flag speed for all the past recent races for that track, for similar tracks, and that'll get me my next point as well. But look at loop data from Racing Reference. Don't use driver averages. I'm sorry. I use Racing Reference. It's been much better. Racing-reference.info. You could sign up for Fantasy Racing Cheat Sheet. They have all the loop data as well. They have things like practice data. They have things like, when you get more advanced, pit stop data that I don't really, almost never use even. There's a lot of advanced analytics that you don't need necessarily to bet NASCAR, like things like restart data, pit stop data. That stuff is like very much in the margins if you're betting. But number 1, watch the sport. Number 2, follow experts. Number 3, understand all the terminology, know where to get it. The loop data or green flag speed. I would say number 1, 2, and 3 sites, not necessarily in any order, are the 3 I just mentioned: iFantasy Race, Racing Reference, and Fantasy Racing Cheat Sheet, as far as like getting your data. And those are the 3 biggest things. And then number 4 would be understanding the track we're at, what it is, and things like the size, the shape, the banking, the age of the track surface. So most tracks, like if you go to their Wikipedia page, you can find most of the time when they last had their repave, when they totally repaved, the asphalt. You can find that, and typically the older the surface age is, the more there will create tire wear, and some drivers thrive on tire wear and some don't. So you'll want to let's look at all the tracks that have an older track surface age. Which drivers perform best at those? You can do things like that. So you need to understand the track and the similar tracks as like number 4. So those would be my 4 biggest, like, if I could, do a Pareto plot of all the things you need to learn for NASCAR, you get 80% of the way there just with those first 4 things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are great points. And I made a few notes here about, and it's similar to your stuff. It comes down to understanding stuff. And the first thing I wrote down was ask the dumb questions.
Yes.
If you're not sure about something, ask the dumb questions, because stuff that like, and you and I are both very open, and there's a lot of people within this industry that are very open to teaching people if they want to know. If you
Mm-hmm.
DM me and you say, what did you mean by this? What does this mean? I will gladly take time out of my day to explain it.
Absolutely.
And if you find someone that doesn't want to answer you, just go on and find somebody else within the industry that will. But it all comes down to understanding the terminology that we use and also the thought process that a lot of us use. Like, obviously, it's quite easy to go and look at a driver's particularly at a particular track, their performance and how they've done over the years. It's just like looking at, I'm going to compare this to golf a lot because I feel like golf and NASCAR are similar betting wise because they both have very large fields and there's plenty of different odds or long shots that could win potentially, and then obviously the favorites. But just like you do your research for golf and you're going to see a particular golfer that does better at this course than they do other ones, you do the same thing for NASCAR. And it comes down to finding similar tracks. And then, like I said, ask the dumb questions. Ask what this means. Ask why people are looking at this. And especially when it comes, and you hit on this, the different track types, learn and understand why people are betting long shots at Talladega and Daytona, but they're not betting long shots at, not Richmond because that's a bad example, but like a Las Vegas or something. Like, we're not betting guys like, I should have wrote down an example. We're not betting like Corey LaJoie at a road course, but we're going to bet him if he's long enough at a track like Atlanta that he's really good at. And it just comes, you need to know the track, how it plays out, and whether these long shot guys, because that's what a lot of people are chasing are these long shot wins, when it's actually a good idea to bet them and when it's not. Another thing that I've always talked about when it comes to NASCAR betting, get used to losing because with the way, if you're betting outrights, you have to get used to losing because you're not going to get the winners super often, and that's why these odds are longer. Like, this is why you're not getting. It's easy to bet a football favorite at -150 and hit the winner. It's a lot harder to do that when it comes to a NASCAR race. So get used to losing and start small. Like, there's no reason to jump into this sport. I have lost so much money in a weekend before, like a disgusting amount that makes you sick, when the weekend's over, just because I was confident, between DFS and betting, like we all have bad weekends, but, definitely get used to losing and always search for someone that's going to help you learn more, and maybe you can then like you and I, we've done this often where you're looking at one thing and I'm looking at something else, and it's like, wait, we need to like kind of take both of these into account at the same time. We're both looking in opposite directions. Does that mean one of us was wrong? No. It means we're just looking at different stuff because there's a ton of data out there in NASCAR that you can look at. And when you can take a step back from a particular point that you're having, and really look at everything overall, it's going to help you. But I will say this, as frustrating as it is to bet on NASCAR on the bad weekends, it is by far one of the best sports to bet on, in my opinion. And that's not coming from me as a NASCAR fan. That's not coming from me as my history in creating content for NASCAR. This is just a very fun sport to sweat betting on, and
fun and painful at times, but that's part of the fun. That is honestly part of the fun. You can't have great days without having bad days, right?
Right.
So we need, like, if every day was great, it would just be a normal day. NASCAR is absolutely the best sweat in betting DFS because it constantly can change. Like even golf, where like is very similar to NASCAR. You mentioned like this guy is good at this course or whatever. Not the same, because you're not going to all of a sudden have 8 golfers get caught up in a wreck and shoot 15 over par on a single hole, right? Like it just doesn't happen that way. So it's like NFL's fun, but by the end of the game, it's either your guy has already beat his prop or the team has already covered or not. And there's very few occasions. I shouldn't say very few. There's enough, but like there's a lot of times where like the betting sweat just isn't there. Whereas NASCAR, even if you feel super comfortable, all my guys are running 1 through 5, everybody I bet on, that wreck with 2 to go can change everything. And you have no idea when that's going to happen. So it's an absolutely incredible sport to bet on, but definitely got to understand the fluctuations. I mean, I know, especially in my DFS days, for every winning week I had 2, 3, or 4 losing weeks in DFS. But the winning weeks are always way bigger. We're always way bigger than the losing weeks. Mm-hmm. So my motto is always lose small, win big, and it always has been. Betting, very similar, although it's a little bit easier to get completely swept in betting than it is in DFS. You're not usually going to have a day where you don't at least have a few DFS lines that cash if you're doing a lot of lineups and entries and stuff. But it's fun. But everything you said, everything I said, I think that all kind of goes hand in hand. That'll get you most of the way there towards learning how to bet NASCAR and motorsports in general. Same thing if you're betting IndyCar or F1. You gotta really, like, I don't bet F1 because I don't give 2 shits about it right now. I used to love F1, but right now it's so bad. The product is so bad that I just have no interest. So I'm not gonna bet F1 if I don't have any interest in watching it, understanding who's good at what tracks and why and what the differences are and all that. I just don't care. I'm not even blindly tailing F1 experts. I'm just not betting it.
Yeah. The only thing I'm betting on with F1 is like if DraftKings or someone offers a parlay boost, then I'll just throw Verstappen to win, and then whoever I bet on exactly. Just to get the parlay boost, because Verstappen's winning every race by 40 seconds.
You can't really go wrong with a guy who's won 10 out of the 12 races this year and 8 in a row or whatever it is. So,
yeah.
But I mean, I see people do those like favorites parlays, or they'll parlay like the favorite from the Truck Series, the Xfinity Series, and the Cup Series. And I'm like, those are losing propositions in the long run. I know you do it so you can get better odds on whatever Cup driver you want or something like that, but they're 100% losing propositions. Unless you're getting value on all 3 legs, you're not making money. And typically you're not getting value on all 3 legs. Like, look at this past weekend, for example. AJ Allmendinger was minus 110 before practice and qualifying. He was minus 110. My model only had him like 35% to win. I know other models had him closer to 50%, but it was still under 50%, and he was minus 110. So you're just not getting value. And then you're like, well, AJ's going to win. Well, no, AJ had a terrible car. He made the best out of it, like we said. He could have finished top 5, but he wasn't as good as Allgaier. He wasn't as good as Custer. He wasn't as good as some of these other guys later in the race as well. It was just one of those things where I shouldn't say truck race, Xfinity race, but it's just one of those things where the favorites don't always win. Yeah, Max Verstappen won. Yeah, Kyle Busch won in SRX. But look at, for example, going into the week, the Truck Series. I think Zane Smith or Corey Heim were the favorites. No, they didn't win. Hell, even the guy everybody thought was the best after practice and qualifying, Ty Majeski, didn't win, right? So, it was like the three biggest favorites throughout various points of the week didn't end up winning in the truck race.
Yeah.
And then Truex didn't win. Harvick
exactly.
didn't win.
Truex didn't
Hamlin didn't win.
Truex didn't even think about winning. So, yeah, I understand the weeks that, the favorites all hit, but how often does that happen with all three series? I would bet that it's very, very rare.
And here's the other thing. I have no problem betting the favorite, if I still think there's value. I've done it plenty of times. I bet Kyle Larson, 7-1 when I think he should be 5-1 or something like that. Or I've bet Martin Truex Jr. 6.5-1 when I think he should be 5-1 at a road course back a few years ago. Those kinds of things. But typically, more often than not, I'm not betting the favorites, especially not parlaying the favorites.
Yeah. So there you go. There's some tips to get into NASCAR betting. And now we are going to get into Michigan, which last year Kevin Harvick won again. Like I said, he's won 5 of the last 7 races here at Michigan International Speedway. Ford has won, 10 of the last 13 or something. I know the only races that they didn't were the ones that Kyle Larson won. Harvick opened up 10-1, and this weekend for Michigan, Firekeepers Casino 400. When I ran my algorithm earlier this week, and it was pretty much in line. The only difference I had with what sportsbooks had was I had Joey Logano a lot higher than they did, but everything else was pretty much in line, which is a reason I don't have any, I didn't do any outright bets so far this week. I didn't see any value on the board. I know you were kind of almost there with Logano, but you're more interested in his top 10 lines. I did end up betting top 10s for Stenhouse at plus 550, for Allmendinger, like you mentioned earlier, at plus 650, just because, I like where they're at with the comparable tracks. But overall, let's start there. What comparable tracks are you looking at this week with Michigan? Because a lot of people say Auto Club because it's also a 2-mile track, but I feel like, especially now with as Auto Club continues to age more and more, and the tire wear is so bad there, that these tracks are just too different to even bring in.
See, this year I think Auto Club's if you're going to use Auto Club, I think this is the year, because it was so cold that the tire wear was much lower than normal.
Oh, I forgot about the cold. Yep.
And same, what is it, right or left side tire or whatever?
I think it's right.
Left side tire. Same left side tire.
Okay.
So I'm using Auto Club. And here's the thing. Remember when Kyle Larson was winning races at Ganassi? He was winning at Michigan and Auto Club. They're both 2-mile ovals, shaped exactly. They were literally meant to be twin tracks. Now, obviously, they've changed because of paving, but there's still a driving style that works at both. One of them, you need more tire management than the other, but there's still a style that works at both tracks. Now, they aren't the best comps for each other, but you can't just ignore Auto Club for Michigan. You can't just ignore Michigan for Auto Club, because horsepower is still a thing, and you got to make horsepower at these tracks. And I think of all years, this year Auto Club is good to use. So I've always used Auto Club in my evaluation of Michigan. I haven't necessarily used it heavily. It's been a low weight in my model, but I definitely use it all the time. And I think this year there's a chance, at least within the last 3 or 4 years, this may be the most representative year because of the cooler conditions that we had in the lower tire wear, plus the same, one of the same sides of tires. So no, Auto Club isn't the first one I was going to mention, but yes, I think we can use it this year. Charlotte, I think, should be one of the first ones we think about, despite the fact that we're not running the same left or right side tires. Charlotte is the same track surface age as Michigan, and because that race is run at night, it's cooler. you still get kind of similar speeds to Michigan. And it's closer in time of year than some of the other ovals like Kansas or Las Vegas. So teams that have, like we always say, there's that shift right around Charlotte. Well, that shift tends to still carry through to like playoff time, and then there's another shift around playoff time again because some teams are experimenting this, that, the other, whatever. So Charlotte I would definitely use. Obviously Vegas and Kansas, and again, Vegas and Kansas both have the same left side tires, just like Auto Club does with Michigan this weekend. Pocono for sure, just because of horsepower.
So I was going to bring that up.
Use that. I know some people use Nashville. I'm not. Nashville's much smaller, flatter banking, concrete. I know the same left side tires, but I'm not using Nashville at all. So I would say Kansas, Charlotte, Las Vegas, Pocono, and Auto Club this year would be the 5 that I'm using. I'm not using Darlington, really high tire, a very different shape, much more steeply banked, and only 1 1/3 miles ballpark there. So again, different tires. So not using Darlington, not using Dover, not using Gateway, which are the other intermediate package ones. Now, when I say not using those, I'm still using them as maybe in terms of like current form. But as far as like similar tracks, no, I'm not using those as far as like similarity track type things to Michigan. So kind of where I stand there. I feel very strongly about including Auto Club.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I was going to bring up Pocono. I feel like a lot of people overlook Pocono, but the horsepower thing and and the recency.
Same time of year.
Pocono's 2 weeks ago. Like not much has changed, and when you have 2 high horsepower tracks, it's good to bring that in. So, but looking at those tracks, the 5, I think you mentioned 5 or maybe 6 from this year. When you look at average running position, when you look at green flag speed, Hamlin's been number 1 on all of those. Truex is up there. Byron, Kevin Harvick, Bubba Wallace have all been solid. And then Ross Chastain has been very solid. But he's fallen off at both Charlotte and Pocono.
And that's part of the recent form. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just another aspect that we have to work with this weekend. But like I said, Ford has a winning way at their home track. Michigan is the home of Ford, so I guess that's my question for you. Does Ford get the win again this weekend? Because I know last season, especially even going into the race, like everybody knew Bubba was fast and knew Hamlin would be fast. I don't think a lot of people were talking about Ford winning this week or last year. Still ended up happening with Kevin Harvick. Do you think Ford can get it done this week? Last I checked, the best I saw him was plus 260 as manufacturer to win. Is that worth a bet this week?
Yeah, this is a tough one because this, I think now is the fastest track on the circuit, period, right? And downforce still matters here, but so does raw speed on the straightaways. And again, that nose thing. I'm very curious which will be more impactful to Ford. Will it be the nose or will it be the downforce? And I thought at Pocono they'd be better than they were. So I'm very curious. I don't know, honestly. I love, like you said, I love Joey Logano this week. He was the first person I DM'd you, I think, a couple days ago, yesterday or whatever. Yeah, it was yesterday, I think, or maybe even Sunday evening. I don't remember. But Joey Logano just smashes here, absolutely freaking smashes here. And Keselowski he's never won here, but he's always been fine here in that Penske, which is amazing that the Michigan drivers never won at Michigan. But it's interesting. Obviously, Harvick won last year. Ford has been winning a ton. Blaney should be fine. It's tough to say because last year the Toyotas were really good, but also Daniel Suarez was really good. Ross Chastain was really good. I think last year there was 6 drivers that led between 22 and 38 laps. 6 drivers led between 22 and 38 laps, and there was nobody that led more than that. And then anybody else that led, it was for like 1 lap or maybe 5 laps on a pit cycle tops, So it was wild. It was a couple Chevys, a couple Toyotas, and a Ford driver there in Kevin Harvick. So I don't really know what to expect from this year's race.
Yeah, and I want to talk about last year because I didn't watch the race. I don't remember what happened. Maybe you have a better or any memory of this race is better than my memory of this race. But there was a lot of incidents, I feel like.
Yeah.
Cindric had an accident. Kyle Busch, J.J. Yaley, Eric Almirola, Stenhouse,
there was that
Harrison Burton.
restart on lap 24.5, whatever it was, after the competition caution. And J.J. Yaley, I think, got pushed from behind and then pushed up into Almirola, which caused a multi-car wreck that collected, like you said, Yaley, Almirola, Kyle Busch, Stenhouse, a couple other drivers as well. So pretty big calamity there. And then Suarez got caught up in an incident late. I think he had a speeding penalty. Christopher Bell got caught up in an incident. I think he was one of those dominators. So it was a pretty wild race last year.
Yeah, I was just about to say that because, looking at Christopher Bell won stage 1, he finished 4th in stage 2, he finished 26th. Suarez led 33 laps, he finished 25th. Chastain, 29 laps led, he finished 24th. Tyler Reddick blew an engine. There was just a lot of shit that happened at Michigan last year. And Ty Gibbs got a solid top 10 finish, surprisingly. Eric Jones finished top 10. He obviously had more speed last year than he does this year, but
Right.
hell, Ty Dillon in the 42 for Petty last year, finished 14th. Do we think we're going to see calamity like that again this weekend, or is it too difficult to predict?
I think it's too difficult to predict. We've definitely seen incidents, at intermediate tracks with this car. This car is really good on the intermediate tracks.
Right.
And we've seen incidents. We've seen great racing. So there absolutely could be. But there's no guarantee there will be. I think it's going to be a very good race. I'm excited for it. I just don't know how to bet it. The only bet I've made so far this week is Ryan Preece to win his group 12-1, because nobody should ever be 12-1 to win their group in a 4-car group.
Yeah.
Unless you're like BJ McLeod versus like good cars, but that's not the case here. We have Preece versus his teammate versus Daniel Suarez, who's fallen off, and versus Chris Buescher, who obviously won last week, but Michigan's a whole different story.
Yeah, you love Joey Logano this week. All of my numbers say that Logano's going to be solid, and he's about the only one that I'm looking at. He's minus 138 for a top 10 right now. If he would get to that minus 120 range, I'd probably hit it. Right now, I'm just holding back, but as far as the outright odds, I think Hamlin. Well, books are between Hamlin and Larson, from what I've seen. Is there any outright that you like, even just a little bit right now, or are you waiting, till practice and qualifying?
I'm probably waiting till practice and qualifying on an outright, but I do like Joey at 16. I think at Superbook, I think you can get him still at 16. Circa just dropped, and he's 11.5 at Circa, which is kind of wild. So I think I definitely like taking 16 if we're going to get 11.5 at a pretty sharp book. But at the same time, I don't really know, because we know Ford has struggled a little bit this year at the intermediates until Charlotte. And Charlotte was, at night. It was in humid conditions, and I thought it was going to be the perfect spot for Ford to have a great day. I still think Ford can have a very good day because of the nose change, because the track is so big and fast. So tough to say. I'm looking last year at just like 5-lap average. You know who was really good last year? Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace, Kyle Busch. They were the 3 fastest in 5-lap averages. But I think it's really interesting. Daniel Suarez, his 5-lap average was somewhere down in the teens. And same with Ross Chastain, who was even much lower. But Suarez's 10-lap average was basically the same as his 5-lap average. And then you look at Kevin Harvick, same thing. He was even lower than Suarez. 5, 10, 15-lap average for Harvick were identical. So they had no fall off. Whereas Denny Hamlin or Bubba Wallace, they had 0.1 fall off. But Kevin Harvick had from more than 0.1. They had like 0.15 fall off from 5 to 15 lap, but Kevin Harvick had half of that fall off, and Daniel Suarez had none from 5 to 10, whereas the Toyotas had 0.1. So I do think there will be some potential predictability in terms of like raw speed from practice, right? Because I mentioned Hamlin, Bubba, Kyle Busch, they're all fast and raw 5-10 lap speed. But the guys that had very little fall off that were maybe a little bit behind also ended up being really good. So practice is going to be super interesting this week. This may be the week I bet the lowest volume of the whole year.
I think I'm right there with you. I like Michigan, but I don't. And I don't know what it is. It's just one of those tracks where, like, I don't know. Like, I can't explain it. I just don't particularly like it. It's one of those, most of the time over the years, I have sat back and not played much DFS, not bet, but just enjoyed the race. Because I do like the racing at Michigan. Like, as fast as they get going into turn one, it's awesome to watch.
And there's so many lines you can take. I mean, the track is so wide. Just like Auto Club, obviously. But, like, the racing there is usually really good. It's just, I hate betting Michigan. I'm right there with you. I hate betting Michigan. Thank goodness for IndyCar this week, because I matched the shit out of Kyle Kirkwood. He opened 10-1 for Nashville, and I absolutely obliterated that line at Caesars. He opened 10-1 at DraftKings as well. Other people bet him at DraftKings and moved him now down to 8-1. But I have a very large bet on Kyle Kirkwood to win Nashville. Very large bet on him to finish top Honda, and I also bet car number 20 to 29 to win Nashville, because Colton Herta is so fucking good at Nashville. He's had 2 bad finishes. Well, I should say he had 1 bad finish because he wrecked out the first Nashville race. And then last year's Nashville race, he had an incident early on with Dalton Kellett, came back from a lap down and finished 5th. And Colton Herta opened 10-1 at DraftKings. He's 9-1 now. He's 8.5 at Caesars. I haven't bet him yet, but I did bet him in car number 20 to 29 to win, because he's car number 26, I believe it is. And the Andretti cars are 26, 27, 28, 29. Maybe Colton's 20. Yeah, Colton's 26, Grosjean's 28, Kyle's 27, and their teammate Devlin DeFrancesco is 29. But then you also get Rinus VeeKay and Ryan Hunter-Reay for the Ed Carpenter cars through number 20 and 21. So I bet them at 3.5 to 1, 20 to 29 to win, because Romain Grosjean has been really good at the street courses as well, at least at the beginning of the year. I know he's obviously going through a slump now, but he's fighting for his job. He needs a good race, so I could see him, turning it on again at the streets of Nashville. So I'm going to be betting IndyCar much more than I'm going to be betting NASCAR this week.
We're obviously, we're all rooting for Kyle Kirkwood. Like, I'm going to have to bet Kyle Kirkwood just because, to support you and your fandom there of Kirkwood.
So real quick on him, for those who are listening, last year Kyle Kirkwood was in literally the shitbox of shitbox equipment, like the Rick Ware Racing, if you're a NASCAR fan, of IndyCar. He was in AJ Foyt equipment. Those cars were the worst. He legitimately had a car that could contend for a top 5, or potentially, if things went the right way with some late race stuff, the win. He was 60 to 1 top Chevy, and was top Chevy, or would have been top Chevy had he not gotten a penalty which set him back, and then as he tried to pass, David Malukas got in a wreck there. But he legitimately contended for top Chevy at 60 to 1, and the race win at triple digits in a shitbox car. Now he's moved over to Andretti Autosport. Andretti Autosport has absolutely crushed the street courses this year. They only have 1 win to show for it, but they are easily a premier team on the street courses, just like Ganassi, even a couple of the Penske cars, etc. And maybe like Pato O'Ward from Arrows McLaren. So we're getting Kyle. Remember, he won the street race at Long Beach. He crushed at Detroit, another street circuit, where he got wrecked on lap 1, went from the back all the way to the front again and finished 6th. He could have won at Toronto. I mean, this dude has had some bad luck this year, but he's been obliterating the street circuits. So I'm really excited for Kyle Kirkwood this week. I think I really wanted to go to the race. Ended up, obviously, so if you've been following me, my cat has been unfortunately had to have her leg amputated. She had cancer in her leg. So I'm not going to go, not because of money, but like I need to take care of my cat. But it also did cost me a pretty penny to, have that surgery done. So bummed because I wanted to be there for Kyle Kirkwood's second career win.
Yeah. So if you're looking to tail Nick, make sure you bet Kyle Kirkwood this weekend. As I said, the race is this weekend, right? Make sure I get that right.
Yep. On Sunday.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, make sure you do that.
Best chance for him to win the rest of the year, for sure.
And obviously, you had that that big hit during his first win this year, or his first ever win this year. Yeah. So, obviously, we're coming off a long shot winning at Richmond. What do you think the chances are a long shot wins at Michigan this weekend? And just to cut a line here of what long shot means, let's set it at 20 or longer.
I think there's a decent chance. I don't think it's going to be like a Ty Gibbs or anything, but I mean, look who's longer than 25-1. 20-1. Brad Keselowski, last week's winner, is 25-1 at some books. Not really on Ty Gibbs, but Alex Bowman 40-1 I think is interesting. If Trackhouse picks it back up, Daniel Suarez dominated a portion of this race last year. I think that's possible. So I don't think it's likely that a long shot wins, but I don't think it's out of the question that a long shot wins this race.
I'm there with you. I don't see it happening, but just the way that we've seen these intermediate tracks go this year, it's not going to be surprising at all. And like you said, Bowman's attractive there at 40, just because comparable tracks this year, Bowman has been solid. Another guy, and we talked about him earlier, Chase Elliott's sitting there at 16-1. Mm-hmm. He's never won at Michigan, but he's really fucking good here. He's only finished worse than 11th once, and that's 12 career starts. You remember when he came to the Cup Series, 3 straight finishes of second place here at Michigan. Has not cracked the top 5 since. Do I think he's going to win? No, but that was one number that kind of popped off to me on the chart here with Chase Elliott sitting at 16-1. Does he get the Premier Hendrick equipment now, trying to get him into the playoffs? That's if there's any potential of that happening. I could see that happening as well, because obviously, if they're picking between Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman, they're going to want Chase Elliott to get into the playoffs over Bowman. Like that's,
yeah,
it's no secret. But
that one's pretty obvious because Elliott has more upside to win the title.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like I said, Harvick just absolutely ridiculous here. 4 of the last 5 races he's won. Absolutely insane. I'd like to see Harvick win again, because remember last year he won in the Busch Light Apple car. This year he's running the Busch Light Peach car. So it'd just be funny if it happened again.
That is pretty funny.
Another long shot I was looking at, and I just checked on my phone because it's not available anymore. But Caesars laid out Todd Gilliland top 10 at 60-1, and I'm kicking myself for not betting it earlier, because it doesn't take much, especially like we've seen calamity happen at Michigan, not only last year, but in previous years. We've seen things happen this year at Pocono where strategy comes into play, or like some of these other intermediates. So if you were able to get on Gilliland 60-1 top 10, good on you, because that's
awesome.
Crazy.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, it was up earlier today, and I don't know why I didn't bet it, because I mean it's Todd Gilliland too. Like I love Todd Gilliland, but
that reminds me, we need to check FanDuel, because so often they post odds during our podcast recording.
Yeah, I was just
they
still
only have the outrights. They still only have the outrights, sadly enough.
Yeah. Anybody else you eyeing this week? Austin Hill's making the start this week in that Beard Motorsports 66 car. He raced the 33 for RCR last year, came home 18th in this race. did not run that well, but, with all the people having issues, he was able to move up to 18th.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's all the usual suspects. Like, my model's pretty high on. I will say my model is pretty high on Chase Elliott, so I really like that call by you. I may actually end up on Chase Elliott at 16-1. If I look at, for example, Joey Logano versus Chase Elliott, my model's actually higher on Elliott 16-1 than it is on Logano 16-1. So for me, Logano's less of an outright play at 16. I really want to hit his top 10 though, because I mean, I forget what the number is that I sent you on our chat, but it's something ridiculous where Joey Logano has all but 3 or all but 4 top 10s at Michigan with Team Penske, and that goes back to 2013, which of course 2012 is when Michigan was repaved, so it's all on the same Michigan surface right now. So yeah, I really like Joey Logano's top 10 potential here, but as far as like upside, I think you're right. I think maybe Chase Elliott would be the guy that I bet, because my model, I'm looking at it right now, Chase Elliott is just a tick behind his teammates Kyle Larson and William Byron there. So may have to join the Chase Elliott train this week at 16-1. We'll see. I think I'll probably end up doing it.
Well, that feels good. Now I feel good. Thinking Chase Elliott before. I'm right there with you.
No,
I said,
my model definitely likes him.
Logano top 10 is it's minus 134 at Bet Rivers right now. I'm hoping FanDuel just gives us a little bit number, and I'll hit it. But those are really the only things I'm looking at right now. Like I'm not seeing anything else that I particularly like. No,
not at all. It's gonna be an interesting running hot for me. I'm gonna have to probably just give a bunch of leans. You know what I mean? Because there isn't much out there. I think this will be my lightest betting week, at least going into the weekend. DraftKings posted top 3s now. That's interesting. They have Chase Elliott 4-1, but you can get Chase Elliott plus 465 at Bet Rivers, which is the Canby books. Curious what. Now I'm gonna have to pull up Superbook, because Superbook does top 3s. So let me pull up Superbook and see what they have on Elliott's win and top 3 numbers, because that could be a good one. They Superbook has very low hold because they have such high volume, and they're a big book. So they have plus 450 on Chase Elliott top 3. Maybe that's the bet I end up taking, is Chase Elliott top 3. Because you can get 4.65 at the Canby books. You can get 4 at DraftKings. This is 450, and then they have Chase Elliott's outright at 16-1 there. Yeah, so could absolutely hammer Chase Elliott 16-1. 4.5-1 top 3 if you wanted to, because FanDuel has 16-1 on his outright. Like I said, you can get down to the Canby books at 4.65. I haven't even checked Bet365 for Chase Elliott. Let me do that right now. To win outright, Chase Elliott is 14 at Bet365. His top 3 is 4-1, so not as good at Bet365. A lot of times Bet365 also has better odds on certain things. Like I know I was looking at top 10 finish, and I think they have the best top 10 odds on Stenhouse, who you mentioned earlier. And I really like Austin Dillon this week. I'm high on Austin Dillon. I'm high on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And I'm high on Joey Logano. And I think now I'm high on Chase Elliott, because you planted that seed, and I had to go look, and I'm like, yeah, he's right there with Byron and Larson, so I think I'm just gonna have to do it.
I just found a matchup that I like, and if you know me, I don't bet matchups very often, but I like matchups. This. Joey Logano minus 110 over Chastain.
See, that's the one that I saw that earlier, and I'm like, man, I just don't know what Chastain's speed's going to be like. Because if it was last year, Chastain was the better car. He just didn't get the result. He's been so much better. Chastain's been so much better in flags this year at the similar tracks than Logano, other than Pocono. And I don't really know how much Pocono comes into play.
But that was another track. Chastain had a race-winning car at Pocono last year, and he was dog shit this year.
Yeah.
If I'm betting an early week head-to-head, it's Logano minus 110 over Chastain. That's on Superbook. And I like it. I think I'd like that matchup even if Chastain would have the speed from last year. I just think Logano's better.
I'm not quite there. I don't hate it. I'm just not quite there.
I am for sure.
Let me look at Chastain in my model here. Yeah, my model has Chastain just barely over Joey Logano, so I don't think I'm quite there. But I think a lot of that is the early season similar track stuff, because definitely Chastain's recent form is terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think I might end up betting this.
Yeah, it's one of those for me. I'm too conflicted.
I like it.
I'm too conflicted to bet it.
I'm definitely conflicted, but I also really like betting against Chastain.
Well, yeah, that's true. Just
there's also that
just as much as just as much as I love betting on Kyle Kirkwood, and there are definitely races I don't bet on Kyle, but anytime I can, I will. I'll find some angle to bet on him if I can. I think it's kind of similar for you in terms of betting against Ross Chastain.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and let's get our picks to win this week.
I picked Truex last week, didn't I?
You did. You had Truex last week. I had Larson.
Yeah,
you had 111th Logano.
Well, I was gonna say, wasn't I like partially on Joey Logano because my model was high on Joey Logano, and I should have trusted my model. I should have taken like his top 5 or something, because he had a very good car. He didn't have, he didn't have a race winning car, but he had a car that if he just kept it clean and drove, he certainly had a top 10 car and had that opportunity to finish in the top 5, and he did.
He had a Joey Logano race, is what he did.
Yeah, absolutely. And Blaney had a Blaney race at Richmond.
Exactly. Yep. So yeah, who you got this week?
Tyler Reddick kind of had a Tyler Reddick race at Richmond too. Like he obviously led the start, just like that one year where Brian Blaney led at the start of Richmond. But then he just kind of fell back, right? Never was.
Yeah, and then he got that
quite
penalty.
The same again. They got the penalty. But I mean, Reddick probably had a top 5 or 6 car, but that's Reddick for you at Richmond. If he has a car that's capable of winning, he'll make sure to be 5th or 6th. Actually,
that's
Reddick
penalty, and then in general. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's why a few weeks ago I talked about Reddick and people saying he's a championship contender. No, he's not. Like he proves it time and time again. No, he's not. But,
so you pick first. I picked first last week.
Okay, yeah, because you went with the favorite Truex. I'm gonna go Bubba Wallace.
I do like that.
I think Bubba Wallace.
I like that a
lot.
I think
Bubba Wallace punches his ticket into the playoffs this week and gets a win.
I like that a lot. He's good at this track type. I mean, the flags, all that, he's right there.
I mean, look at how much speed he had at Richmond, and he's not good at Richmond. This team is bringing speed.
Mm-hmm. They sure are. I might just have to go FU mode and say Chase Elliott's not going to points his way in, but he's going to damn win his way in. So I'm going to take Chase Elliott. You got me on the Chase Elliott train now, man.
Chase Elliott.
This is your fault. This is 100%. This is 100% your fault. Because I was not expecting my model to be like, oh yeah, he's right there with William Byron and Kyle Larson. Was not expecting that at all, but it is.
That's awesome. Oh man, so I'll root for that as well because I want the playoff drama. I want Chase Elliott to win his way in and then all of a sudden McDowell's in win now mode on these road courses.
What? Okay, now I'm very curious. We got to find like Chase Elliott's longest odds to win the championship or something, or make the Final Four, because if he's going to win this race, he's in the playoffs, right?
Right. I think Bet Rivers is the only one that does to make the Final Four.
Caesars
odds.
has to make the Final Four.
Do they?
Caesars has
Shows
Elliott
how much I
at
pay
4.5
attention.
to 1. I know I've seen other places too. But yeah, I'm sure Bet Rivers does. There's another.
Bet Rivers is plus 300, so
Maybe it's BetMGM. Bet Rivers is plus 300. Caesars is 450. Let me check. BetMGM. I think they have. Yeah, they have. Oh, they have to make the playoffs. They have Chase Elliott plus 260, which is stupid.
to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I would take a no on that. Right, if he doesn't win this weekend, I don't think he's making the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't understand betting that when you can just bet him outright at these other races. Bet him 60 to 1 now.
They do have top four.
Bet him.
They have Chase Elliott to make the Final Four at 4 to 1. Yeah, so Caesars has the best price at 4.5 to 1 to make the Final Four for Chase Elliott. I was looking at championship championship odds or whatever, who could make the championship, and obviously was thinking about Buescher and Keselowski simply because of the fact that they were so good. And I'm looking at the schedule. Chris Buescher won Bristol last year. Well, that's round 1 of the playoffs. Talladega, we know Buescher, Keselowski will be fine at Talladega. Either one of them could win. I know more likely Keselowski than Buescher. But Keselowski was great at Darlington earlier this year. They were both great at Homestead last year. Remember, I hit Keselowski top 4 at Homestead last year. So round 1, Keselowski and Buescher have very realistic shots to make round 2. Round 2, Talladega. That's all you need. Round 3 has Homestead, which, again, both of them were just nails last year. Plus Martinsville, which Keselowski's really good at. I'm a little curious if I should bet Keselowski to make, and or Buescher to make the Final Four. Not necessarily to win the championship, but to make the Final Four. So Buescher at Caesars is 6 to 1. 6 to 1 at BetMGM. And I don't know what Bet Rivers has, but then Keselowski is 425 at BetMGM and 450 at Caesars. So same as Chase Elliott.
I'm pulling up Bet Rivers right now.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be worse. Yeah, Keselowski plus 325, Buescher plus 600.
So Buescher's 6 everywhere, but I don't hate it. I think it obviously takes a lot of things right for that to happen, especially for Buescher. But I could see Keselowski doing it.
Interesting. They have Bubba at 16. Just seems a little off to me.
Yeah, Bubba's 15 at BetMGM and 15 at Caesars.
I'm just, the amount of speed that he's had.
He won
That just
Kansas
kinda
last year.
surprises
We
me.
know he can win Talladega. The Las Vegas, Homestead, Martinsville round is going to be tough, but remember, he was top Toyota at Las Vegas until the Larson incident, where he got suspended. Homestead he could be good at, right? And then
Martinsville has finished top 10 the last 2 races.
He's pretty good at Martinsville. I don't hate that. He finished 5th at Darlington, which is the best Homestead comp. Yeah, man. I don't know. I don't hate
Interesting. It just seems a little too long for me. I was expecting about the 12 range. So when it comes up at 16, I'm like, oh.
Yes, I don't hate that.
That's.
And you and I hate betting these futures typically.
I know. I only did with Truex when they let me parlay them with race winners. That was fun. They don't let you do that anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got anything else for this week?
Nope.
right off into the sunset with Michigan. And next week we get to talk Indy Road Course.
Dude, I'm much more excited for Indy Road Course just from a betting perspective, not from a race perspective. I think Michigan's gonna be a more fun race, but I'm more excited for
Indy's
going
gonna be a shit show
perspective. Yeah, because it's gonna be a shit show, and that we can take advantage of that.
Yep, just like we did last year. Bubba Wallace, top Toyota, 100-1. Never forget.
That was the race I hit both Harrison Burton and Todd Gill in top 5 or whatever it was, 30-1.
Yeah. That was just that race. But
that was awesome.
Good luck to everybody this week at Michigan. We'll talk to you next week when we break down Indy Road Course and getting closer and closer to these playoffs. It's going to be fun. See if Chase Elliott can point his way in or get the win this weekend at Michigan. I know Nick and I will now be rooting for that after this episode.
Chase Elliott, but now I'm rooting for him. Damn it.
See you guys.